Hello everyone, Buzzkiller here, and I'm back in Space Engineers to show you my latest Star Citizen project. Due to the lack of any significant content, i.e. the FPS module, being released in Star Citizen, I've continued working on my ships here in Space Engineers. Now this landing pad we're on may just be a simple extension of the basic starter platform in Engineers, but it's become my home away from home when not playing Star Citizen. Thus, I've decided to go ahead and name it the Foundry, after Foundry 42, which is actually kind of appropriate considering this is where I build most of my Star Citizen ships. Now, in the future I do plan on expanding the Foundry, possibly making it into a proper hangar, but that's going to take a considerable amount of work, and since I'm going to be continuing building ships, it may take a while. So in my last video I built this Freelancer Max, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback from my viewers. The majority of it was positive, and some was in the form of constructive criticism. The biggest complaint I got was that I didn't put any glass on the ship. Well, Arthur Frazeo pointed me in the direction of the small ship Mega Mod Pack in the Steam Workshop. This allows me to use any large ship component on small ships, including glass. And while, as you can see, I have not retrofitted the Freelancer, I have used it in my latest project, the Origin 300i. The 300i was a suggestion from the Creeper Dude 5, and while I couldn't get the ladder working for him, I hope he's happy with the results. Let's take a look, shall we? And here she is. Again, this is the base 300i by Origin. There's a lot of different variants, but he requested the 300i, so I stuck with that. It shouldn't be too difficult to go ahead and retrofit it and make a few minor adjustments to change the paint and the shape of the rear end to get the other variants in, so I'll probably end up doing those eventually. Now, the 300 series has a lot of complex curves, even more so than the Freelancer, and it's really difficult to pull off that kind of detail in Space Engineers. So as you can see, I had a lot of sculpting on the nose, and while it looks pretty close, I'm not 100% happy with it. But it's pretty much the best I can do. I hope you appreciate the amount of effort it took. Another difficult area that I was really hoping I could get to work was the entry door here. I was hoping to use the angled door as in the actual ship, but I kept trying and I kept failing. I couldn't get it to work without exploding every time I opened the door. So here's the standard straight up and down door. I just tried to keep it similar in shape to the actual ship. And the wings, of course, are another really difficult part. I think I did a pretty good job on those. Again, the angles are really tough to pull off in Space Engineers. So let's take a look at the interior. Now each side does have a little button here recessed. Allows you access to the doors. And as you come in, you can see, I think the best job I did on the entire ship was the interior. If you look, I've got the sloped floor here. Of course, it's a very basic interior, so it shouldn't be too hard to pull off. I've got the buttons here to open and close the doors. The paint job's a little simplistic. But again, with the one block size minimum of any paint stroke, I think I did a pretty good job here. These little lightened areas are supposed to be where the bed pops out. And of course you have your cockpit with the skylight. As you can see, the canopy is not 100% true to the original, but it's one of the concessions I had to make. Tried to get it as close as possible, at least keep it in the spirit of the original ship. So it's got a pretty decent viewing angle. another look from the outside. The weapons on the wings there came with the Mega Pack. Those are actually sniper rifles, and I did put those on the Freelancer as well. Here, let me scroll over there, you can see them. So I replaced the missile launchers with those sniper rifles. They look more appropriate. Man, those things do some serious damage. I'll show you that when we take it for a test flight. Let's go ahead and go back in. Pull up my HUD. Actually, it's easier to fly from the external view. Let's go ahead and close that door. Power up our main power. And everything else. Let's see, thrusters, gyros. There is a small gravity generator. Lights. And we'll just take off here a little bit. See, I've got the nav lights going with the strobe light. And yes, this time I did put them on the right side. The green is on the right, the red is on the left, with two strobes, top and bottom. Again, as in the Freelancer, I had to hide most of my maneuvering thrusters to enable the ship to fly with any decent speed and maneuverability, while keeping just the minimal thrusters on the outside. Of course, the rear engine, there was no helping that. I had to put a bunch of engines on the back to let it move out at a decent rate. And it flies fairly well. As you can see, it's a little slow, but it actually maneuvers really well. Go to an interior view. I show you, yes, I do have a nose gun, which is a standard Gatling. And then those big sniper rifles on the ends. These things do a massive amount of damage, but it's really hard to aim them since you have to get really close to see a reticle. There they are. But just does massive amounts of damage. You can see the left one taking out the platform there. But there you have it. Origin 300i. So let me show you some of my process in building the ship. Okay, as you can see, I started off once again with the basic floor plan layout. This is where I do most of my measuring. I figure if I can get the interior to feel right, then the rest of the ship should fall into place. It's not going to be perfect because of the block sizes in Space Engineers, but it's going to be pretty close. Here's the first basic pass of the front section. Notice the nose is still way too short, and I'm starting to build up and try to get the cargo doors done. This is the interior here, the very basic block out. I ended up narrowing the hallway there going to the front cockpit and letting it open back up into the cockpit area as in the actual ship. There's another shot of those doors. Again, they just didn't look as good and they aren't at all functional, so I ended up having to go with the straight doors here. And here also you can see I started lengthening the nose, trying to get that to feel right as well. There's a shot of the door open. Okay, in this one I actually was considering using a fighter cockpit to minimize the amount of work I'd have to do on the canopy. But as you can see, it just didn't fit in right, and didn't look very good. So I put the original seat back in and continued working on the exterior. Here you can see I did a lot more work on the nose, trying to get the sculpting, trying to get the angles right, and got the basic length of the wings figured out and the tail. Here I started filling in the wings. The upper wings there are actually flat. Those are just in place to give me an idea of how far back I needed to go to make sure that the tail matched up correctly, and it actually was pretty close. Here's the wings covered, with the top at least, and the rear wings angled upwards to meet the tail. Had to go ahead and put the basic white paint job on. It makes it a lot easier to fill in. It's easier to fill in the details than it is to start with a base ship. Otherwise, you'll have blocks that are visible, but you can't get to them to paint them without removing the block on top of them. So it's best to start off with your base color as close as possible and work your way up on the details. Here's the first shot at the front canopy. Again, the glass is not perfect, but I think I got as close as you can in this game. I did some minor revisions after this to reduce the number of panes and get the angles right. Here's a front shot of the nose, trying to get that squared away. And this is the interior after I did pretty much the final pass, getting the slopes in. See here, I narrowed the hallway and it opens up again into the cockpit. Here's a first start on the rear section. I had to shave down that fuel scoop from that height. As you can see, it's much too high, much too clunky. And of course, I used all the space inside of that rear section to place more engines to allow the ship to maneuver. And here's the rear again with the ship with the engines in place. Also crammed as many as I could inside the wings and in the center section for more propulsion and braking. And you can see where I put all my power plants, the power supplies, or reactors, and gyros. And then there's the bottom all buttoned up. And that just left me with paint and a few minor details, and she's done. Well, that about wraps up this look at my 300i project in Space Engineers. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and hit that like or subscribe button. And once again, all of my projects are available in the Steam Workshop under the name Buzz, that's Buzz with 3 Z's, Space Killer, in the Steam Workshop. So feel free to go check out my page and download the ships and have fun. Until next time, this has been Buzz Killer, and I'll see you guys in the verse.